All right, we're going to look at the Nellcor bedside pulse oximeter. This is a tabletop model that has alarms in it. This is the Pm100n unit. You'll notice right now that we've got on the front screen, we've got a sine wave here. It just indicates that we're plugged into line current. We're plugged into the wall, and the battery is charging at this point. So the unit does have a battery. It's got a 5-hour operational battery. It takes about 4 hours to charge. So most units, once they've been plugged in, are still going to work for us for about 5 hours if the power goes out for some reason. The power cord just plugs into the back right here. That's where the power cord is located. I'm going to go ahead and attach the cable, and we'll get the unit powered up so you can see the display, and we can go over the different controls here. The cable is 9 feet long, and it has a connection like so. So it's got the protrusion here that we need to line up with that cutout on the inlet on the oximeter. Snap it in. Make sure you always put connections in firmly in there, and it should click into place. They lock in so that there's an unlocking buttons on the side here to pull it back out again. So make sure that that's snapped in all the way. And I'm going to go ahead for demonstration. I'm going to use this finger probe. This is an adult finger probe. Just opens up like so. I'll put my finger in there. They attach, all the probes attached. There's a number of different options here, but they all attach like so. And again, we've got pins that line up in the holes there with a cutout and a protrusion inside the cable. So it's just a matter of looking in there and getting things lined up. When you put it in, give it a good push, and then close the little door to lock it into position. Other option for the oximeter for a type of probe that's used, this is a wrap probe, and in this case the light emitter and the receptor are here, so they're just a matter of wrapping it around the finger or toe. Even on an infant, a small infant, you could go around their foot and wrap it on that way. So there's a number of different probes available that could be used with this oximeter. I'm going to go ahead and power it up now. Our power button is here, and we need to press that in and hold it for a few seconds until it powers up, and you'll see the screen start to light up here. And it goes through a self-check process. So you'll notice at the bottom, the bar goes across here progressively as it's going through its little self-check procedure. And as it does, it'll start to pick up. So the theory of operation on these units is that there is a light that is sent through out of the probe, and it picks up on the other side. So when I'm putting this on, what's happening is that it's reading a color spectrum of the blood that is pulsing through my finger, and you notice that I get a perfusion indicator here showing me that it's picking up like it should be, and it comes on and it starts working. You can tell that right now the beep is on the unit, so this is the pulse beep, and we may or may not want to have that functioning while we're using it. Usually people don't want to have that on. And you can see right now that my oxygen saturation is 99%, 100, and my pulse rate is nice calm 57. So that's what we're sitting at here right now. Pulse rate, or the oxygen saturation, clinically usually considered tip-top, is about 98. So there is a little bit of an accuracy rate that we deal with here with pulse oximeters, but they're pretty close to being accurate. The reason for the pulse perfusion indicator is to show that we're picking up a good pulse. And the idea is that if we're picking up a good pulse, getting a nice steady pulse readout, that the oxygen saturation is probably accurate. If we were getting an inaccurate, very low perfusion pulse, not a very good pickup, we would probably question the SpO2 or the saturation that we're getting from the unit right now. So the unit right now is indicating also a plethysmograph here where it's picking up and just showing a waveform when people don't usually pay a lot of attention to that, but it does just show a pickup of the pulse. So let's go ahead, as long as we got that beep going on, let's take a look at what we can do about that. Let's say that we didn't like that beep. So if we go in here, and I'm just rotating this knob, and I'm going down to the gears here, and that's one way to get to the menu. And then another way to get to the menu is to use this home button right here. If I use home, that'll also bring me to the menu. Doesn't matter which way we do it. And so I'm just going to press on this white knob to show you this way, and it's going to pull up the menu. So in this options menu, I can adjust volume. You can see right now if I turn this white knob that my cursor goes up and down. I'm going to get rid of that volume or that pulse volume. So I'm going to select volume, and I'm going to go down to the key pulse volume at the bottom, and I'll click on that. You'll notice now I can turn that volume all the way off. So it's still picking up my pulse, I'm still getting a readout, but I'm not having to hear that beeping. The other thing, notice when I hit the key or when I push on that knob, it beeps. Well, maybe I don't want to hear that. Maybe I would like to have that off. So now that's off. Alarm volume, we never recommend that you turn the alarm volume off. Make sure that that stays on as high as it'll go in most cases, so that you're able to hear any drops in saturation. There, so we've got that locked in where we want it. So let's go ahead and go to return. You see I just turned the knob here, I went to return, and that returns me back to that menu. The other thing that we'll want to set on this oximeter before we get into any of the other readings here is going into the service menu. Now going into the service menu, which this allows me to do, is to change defaults on it. One of the things that users of the oximeter like is that once they put alarm settings in, here's the alarm for the heart, 170 high heart rate, 50 low heart rate, those are the alarm limits. And then here for the saturation, 190, 100 for the top and 90 for the low. To get those to lock in and stay locked in, we need to go to the service menu. And this is just done one time, all right? So once this is done, you don't have to do it again. But to get into the service menu, there's a code. So it's locked, so we need to go in here and push to highlight that 0 right there, and I'm going to change that to the number 4. Click that. I'm going to go down to the next one and leave that at 0, and then I'm going to go down to the next one and turn that to 2. So 402 is the code to use, and that gets me into this service menu. Now there's a lot of information here, but we're just going right to the first one. So it's the power on settings, and you can see right now it's set to factory defaults. That means it's going to come back, no matter what we set the alarms to, it's going to come back to the factory defaults. What I need to do here is change that by pushing in on the knob, and I'm going to change it to last settings. So what that means is whatever the last settings were that I set it at, when I power it up again, it'll be in those last settings, and that's the way that people like to use it. So I'm choosing last settings, and then I'm going down here, and I'm going to be done with that. And then it's going to give me an indication here that I need to turn the monitor off, and what that'll do is reset it. So I'm going to turn the monitor off, and then I'm going to wait for just a second here and then power it back up again. And this will take us back through the recheck. But what it's doing at this time now that I've turned it back on, it's going to be set in last settings mode. So in last settings, that means whatever I put in it now, it'll keep those settings. In other words, the beeping mode, the alarm settings and everything will stay the same. I won't have to reset it every time I use the monitor. So there we are. So we're back on, So you notice now when it comes back on, we're getting a pickup here, but I'm not getting the pulse beeping. That's because it retained my last settings that I put into it. All right, so now you notice that there's a square around the heart setting here, and I can move that over to the pulse or to the saturation, oxygen saturation setting too. And what that does is it allows me to set alarms there. So if I click, if I want to change the high oxygen alarm, saturation alarm, or the low, let's say we're okay with the low heart or with the low saturation dropping to 88. So we could set that at 88. That means now the oximeter will operate normally, but then if it drops down, if the saturation drops to 88, it will alarm. Or if we need it back at 90, we can lock it in there. 90 is typically where that is used, depending on the patient. Now you notice over here something that typically is not looked at when we're looking at alarms, and that's sat seconds. And as a default, it's set at 100. What sat seconds is, it's a combination of how long an oximeter is in the how long it's been in the low setting, in other words 90 or below, and the percent of drop. So in other words, if it drops 4%, in other words dropping 4% like from 90 to down to 86, and if it stayed there for 25 seconds, that would be sat seconds of 100, 25 times 4. So sat seconds aren't looked at, but I just wanted to bring that up in case people wondered what this 100, what is over there, and that is sat seconds. So the other things that we can look at here, we can go and look at we can change patient mode and that kind of thing, and these typically are not done. So these are kept in the standard mode, and what the standard mode does is allow access to all the numbers that are in the unit. So we're going to leave those right where they are. I'm going to go to return, move over to here, and this allows me to go to an area, the little bell here for alarms. This allows me to change the sat seconds if I want, which I don't. 100 is a great default. But then there's our pulse rate, that's PR, so 150, 190 for our saturation, and everything is locked in. Troubleshooting on oximeters. Oximeters are really prone to problems with motion. So if there's a lot of motion in the probe, like right now where it doesn't pick up, that's one of the things. And it was just because I was moving it around quite a bit, so it wasn't able to pick up a good pulse. So don't be real concerned if you start getting erroneous readings with it if the patient it's being used on is moving a lot. If there's a lot of movement with the probe, as you can imagine, it can't read the light as it's going through the probe and pick up the color spectrum. Otherwise, oximeters will just continue to operate just like this. They'll give us a beep for a heart rate too low, too fast, and an oxygen saturation too low are the typical settings that we're looking at. If you're having a problem where the oximeter is beeping and you're trying to figure out the problem, there is an alarm silence button here that you can push to give you 60 seconds of no alarm while you're trying to deal with the patient. But I'll just recommend you never ignore alarms on oximeters. Always look at the patient first. Don't just deal with the machine, but look at the patient, see how the patient is doing, then look and see what you can do as far as fixing the oximeter alarm.